Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to our panel, Tracing the Trails of Trails with Anime Expo Guest of Honor, Mr. Toshihiro Kondo. I'm Anne, and I'll be your MC tonight. Thank you. And I also have here with me today Sean, and he works in the NIS America Localization Department. Sean, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi everybody. You may have seen me over at the booth, but my name is Sean Cox, and I'm in the Localization Department at NIS America, and I'll be helping out a little bit with this evening's panel. Thank you all so much for attending our booth.
And of course, we can't start today's panel without introducing our very special guest, President of Nihon Falcom, Mr. Toshihiro Kondo. Kondo, please come on down. Okay, Mr. Kondo, today is the second day of Anime Expo. You have had a whirlwind couple of days here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling tonight?
It's gone by in a flash. I've been able to participate in so many panels and events and signings and things like this that it feels great, but now we're here.
And so this, again, is your very last panel of the day. We had our Trails Through Daybreak 2 announcement earlier today. Is anyone excited for that?
そうですね。今日は本当に黒の奇跡1の発売日です。
Yeah, to be here on the release date of Daybreak 1 and also to be able to announce to all of you Daybreak 2 was absolutely amazing. And I don't know how much NIS America actually worked behind the scenes to make that possible, but it's really cool that I was able to do that. I'm really happy about that.
非常に嬉しく思います。
So in today's panel, we're actually going to be tracing the history of the Trail series. As you know, this year marks the 20th anniversary of the Trail series, and they opened a website over in Japan that everyone's very excited about. And Mr. Kondo, how does it feel to have the series of yours finally reach the 20-year mark?
空の奇跡を一番最初に
So I actually first started Trails in the Sky 20 years ago when I first joined Nihon Falcom. And it's amazing to me to be sitting here to think that what we started so long ago actually continued to this day. It was a lot of work, it was difficult at times, but to think that the series has come this far and I'm able to be here and continuing the series is absolutely an amazing feeling, and I'm really happy about it.
やってきてよかったなという一言に尽きると思います。
So, don't get too excited. All right. So, with the Trails series, as those of you gathered here know, it takes place over a huge scale, as you can see on the map behind me here. So, we've had so many games taking place in all corners of this map, everywhere from the Liberal Kingdom to Crossbell to the Erebonian Empire, and now with Trails Through Daybreak going into Calvard. And so with something on the scale of this, it is huge. And that is a very unique aspect to the series that I think all of us find very fascinating. So what about Trails, aside from this setting, do you find to be really unique among video games?
そうですね。
Thing that I would say is that we actually made this map 20 years ago when I first started on the series. And the idea was to essentially tell the tale of almost every place on this map. And I would say the biggest difference between other RPGs is that we're still doing that 20 years later. And so I personally designed Liberal Kingdom. You can see that if you're not familiar with it, which probably all of you are, right? It's in the bottom left of this map with the lake in the middle. And I had the idea for Liberal, and then obviously we had the idea for the Erebonian Empire, and then Crossbell, and then going out from that, making each and every new area and expanding upon it and developing it more and more is something that we've been able to do over 20 years.
シリーズを重ねるごとに地図が広がっていったっていうところもちょっと新しいんじゃないですかね。
That is extremely fascinating, not just to me, I'm sure to everybody else here, but thank you so much for that answer. Another thing that I'm curious about is really with Trails, how do you keep everything straight? So from a localization perspective, this is something we always struggle with. As I'm sure you all can imagine, it's very hard to keep all the details straight. So how do you do it?
So yeah, basically internally, all it is just a lot of hard work, checking everything, constantly rechecking everything, going back to notes that we have, going back to past games that we've had to make sure that everything is correct and accurate to what came before. One of the really difficult aspects of this is onboarding new people. Whenever we get new staff, whether that be in the scenario writing team or whether that be in the development team, we have to make sure that they're caught up with everything. And so basically, what that entails itself is also making sure that they are all familiar with everything that came before. Particularly one of the difficult areas is NPCs. There's at this point hundreds, if not thousands, of NPCs. All of them are named, and we try as hard as we can to, even as far as to not, making sure we don't reuse a name of a particular NPC. All I can really say is that it's a lot of hard work and a lot of effort and energy. There's no real secret other than that. So speaking of NPCs, have you ever thought, considering all the places we've visited in Zemuria so far, how many NPCs are there?
何人いるかって皆さん想像されたことあることありますか
In Calvard, in each area, there's about between 200 and 400 different NPCs.
NPC が設定されてます。で最初はやっぱり
So when it comes to the naming, back in Trails, we checked every single NPC deliberately to make sure that we weren't overlapping. We still do that, but the issue is that now we've come so far, we've kind of had some cases where they have overlapped, and we've even come to the point where we're coming up with main character names, and we have to go back and look through the NPC list. And sometimes the name will already have been used, so we're like, okay, back to the drawing board.
ロイドは
So there's, a different version of Lloyd. There's another Tio who's a friend of, other characters.
エステルの親友だったりします。
So yes, that's a very difficult aspect of taking track of everything.
Thank you very much for that answer. So actually, here we have a list of all of the series' main titles, and I'm sure everyone out here has various memories of which ones have impacted you the most, or things within each title that you really felt strongly about. And for me, and I'm sure for all of you, each title feels special in its own way. But is there anything in particular for you, Mr. Kondo, that stands out as like, I have a very special memory tied to this specific game and this specific moment?
そうですね。本当にそれぞれのタイトルを。
Well, obviously, each and every title is special to me, and I have memories from each of them. But I would have to say it would be the first Trails in the Sky, because that's the first game that I worked on, and I worked on it having no actual training in game development, and so everything was new to me in terms of writing, taking care of the graphics, looking at all these different aspects of game design, and having to essentially fumble my way blindly through game design. And so obviously, I have a really deep and special attachment to Trails in the Sky.
作ってきたタイトルになりますので、やっぱり空の奇跡は非常に思い出深いですね。あまりにその。
And a particular memory within that is as we were fumbling along within the development, the president came to me and he said, "So, how far along is the game? How you guys doing?" And we said, "We're about 50%, maybe a little bit more." And the president said, "That's all, huh? Well, you can go ahead and release it now."
時の思い出です。
And now you know why the games are divided into SC and FC. So I would actually call that part of our own youthfulness and not having the experience to do it. But yeah, that's how that ended up the way it did.
日本ではその FC
So it took us about 2 to 3 years to actually make FC. And we released it and it came out and, again, there was a long gap of time. And at that point, other employees in the company were like, boy, this sure is a tough one to work on, huh?
社員に言われたことがあります。でまあその辺の苦い
And from there, of course, after the Sky Trilogy, we went on to make Zero Azure, Cold Steel 1 and 2, 3 and 4, Reverie, all the way up into Daybreak now. And I think the reason we've been able to create those a lot more smoothly is because of that time the president got angry with me and told me to hurry up and get it out.
社長に怒られたことがきっかけかもしれないです。はい。
Well, thank you so much. I think we all learned a lot there. And we'd like to move now onto the Q&A section of the panel.
僕が一番好きな NPC はアントンなんですよ。僕が
It's Anton. It's a character that I personally created, and he's actually based on a friend of mine from university.
本当に面倒くさがり屋
He
の
was the kind of person where everything with this guy was a pain. And
そんなことばっかり言ってる人間でした。思い入れの深い
I'm glad that you liked him, though.
てくれてありがとうございます。
Thank you. So now our next question.
そうですね。今回 例えばその黒の
The situation in Calvert is that it's such that it's a really complex society with lots of different good and bad organizations existing. For example, the Heiue are there, the Septian Church is there, all these different things. And Van, being older, it allows him to, he has access to all these kind of underground dark places and different things like that. So actually the contents of his work there, it will be quite different than what's come before, because what's come before, as you pointed out, has generally been, young men and women that are allies of justice, if you were, doing things like that. But this time it's quite different content, you'll see.
にアクセスできるちょっとグレーゾーンの人間が活躍することになります。そういう意味では今までの奇跡とはまたちょっと違った新鮮な奇跡シリーズ。
So I think you'll find Van really refreshing this time, and since Daybreak came out today, please be sure to pick it up.
皆さん帰りにご購入いただいて遊んでいただければなと思います。
Thank you.
そうですね、まず奇跡シリーズの場合は舞台設定を最初に決めるんですね。例えばリベール王国とやっぱりエレボニア帝国。
So when it comes to Orbit and things like this, the thing that comes first is essentially the setting. And so we have to think about the place that we're working in within the world of the game. So for example, Liberal was kind of like a classic or an older style, right? And then when we went to Erebony, things kind of advanced more. And now by the time here that we've gotten to the Calvard Republic, it's basically like modern day with our modern day smartphones and things like that. And so every time we think of a new location, we think of what level of technology it's at, and we think about what ways that we can use what level of technology the orbit should be in relation to that. Obviously, we take a lot of influence from what's happening around us too, and obviously we're also influenced by kind of trends in gaming in general and at large and things like that. So the thing about Orbit is that it's really advanced rapidly, don't you think? And we have to make sure that we, do that carefully and blend it well within the world, each iteration of the game.
なるべくやっぱり共感していただきたいというところがあるので。
Thank you for your question.
そうですね、何かからインスピレーションを受けたってことはない。
So the thing about that there wasn't a specific inspiration that we had for it. All we knew is that we really wanted to have Reen and Crow's relationship be a really important big part of the game, and we wanted to have a symbol of that, like a physical symbol of that, as it were. And so we thought that scenario writer thought that would be a good way to do it and to be a good expression of those two men's relationship, and so that's probably where it came from.
やっぱり重視して決めたと思ってます。はい。
はい。
ちなみにクローの
Now I'm going to give you some bonus dirt on Crow. So when it came to Crow, there's a certain thing that happens to him at the end of the game in Cold Steel 2. I don't want to say it out loud in case anybody hasn't played it yet, so I'll just beep myself when we get there. But there's a part that happens obviously at the end of the game where Crow beep, and then there's an ending, and then another thing continues to happen, right? So the reason for this is actually our sound team had created a really cool song, but at first we didn't really think that it fit. And so we actually had them, there was another song that we had to put in place of it. And so why let a good song go to waste? And so we actually went ahead and made two separate ending sequences, one with beep and one with the one as you know it. So that's why things turned out the way that they did for that.
エンディング2つになったという経緯があります。
Wow.
鬼神の設定はですね、もともとエレボニア帝国には巨人というキーワードが設定されてい
So for this, we had a couple of or a keyword specifically for the Erebonian Empire, which was giants. And so as we created the games, even starting from Sky and then into Zero and Azure, we had an idea that we wanted to do knights too. And so our scenario writer was actually a big fan of robots as well, and we wanted to work that in there as well. And the end result was the Divine Knights.
をやりたいという提案が当時シナリオライターからあったんですね。そこからやっぱり鬼神という設定が生まれました。あとはやっぱり奇跡シリーズ
Practically every region within the entire continent has its own Septarian that's associated with it, and so we thought it would be a perfect way to also blend in the Septarian of the Erebonian region as well as the Divine Knights, and so that's how we linked them together.
の設定が最終的に固まってます。で最新作の黒の
And in Daybreak, of course, there is also a Septarian that exists within Calvert as well, so please keep an eye out for what that could or might be as you play the game.
いただけるとちょっと変わった楽しみ方ができるかもしれないです。
Thank you. What a good question.
あまり言いたくないん
I
ですけど。
really don't want to say this, but maybe with the scenario writer had that in mind. Yes.
やっぱりその
The thing about Lloyd is that he was a character that we hadn't really had like that up until that point, being a very hot-blooded character and like always ready to go, right? And so I've never heard this directly from the scenario writer himself. However, I can say with certainty that they did watch Gurren
見たこ
Lagann.
とはないんですけれど、彼がグレン・ラガンを見てたのは確かです。
Thank you. So, Mr. Kondo, those were some great questions. What does it feel like to get questions like that directly from your fans? Were you put on the spot at all?
いや、一体どんな質問
Yeah, I was really nervous. I didn't know what kind of questions I was going to get, so I'm glad it turned out well.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're actually going to jump into some of the fan-submitted questions that we got from online. So thank you very much if you submitted online. We've selected a few specific questions, and I'm going to start with the very first one, which is, do you take feedback from North American players into account when developing your titles?
Yes, a great example actually would be here for Daybreak. When it comes to combat in particular, we often heard from both players and media over here in North America, is there anything you can do to kind of improve the tempo of combat? And so what we decided to do was to see if we could blend a real-time element with the turn-based combat, which has been traditional to the series, and we think we've done a pretty good job here in Daybreak. When it comes to JRPGs, they've kind of reached a place where you could maybe say they're stagnating a little bit, and we really want to make sure that we can push the genre forward, particularly in regards to combat and improving the tempo of combat. And so this is one of those examples of where we've specifically taken the feedback from Western fans into account when we've made this game, as well as pushing forward our own goals of making great RPGs.
他にも
Another example, when you look at East 9 was from feedback where a lot of people said, have you ever considered making an open world game? A lot of Western fans had asked us that. And so while it's not a completely open world game, you could say there's many open world elements within Balduke inside East 9. So that's another example of how we do try to incorporate feedback from users over in the West.
で黒の奇跡もぜひ皆さんにプレイしていただいて
And in the same way, we'd love for you to play Daybreak, to give us your feedback, let us know how we're doing, and we can hopefully incorporate that feedback and progress the genre even further.
していただいていろんな意見をいただければなと思います。
Thank you very much. So, I see a few people excited about this question. I am as well. Our next question is, will we ever be able to explore the holy city of Arteria someday in a future Trails game?
ちょっとこの場でアルテリアに行けるかどうかっていうことを
So I can't say here and now whether we will go to Arteria directly or not, but what I will say is that as the seat of the Septian Church, and as we get closer and closer to unraveling the mysteries that we've weaved throughout all of the games here in the Trail series, it's going to be a very, very important place because this church has existed since the Dark Ages within the world. And so it obviously is deeply connected to it, and it's a very important place, and we'll just have to see what happens in the future.
行けるようになるかどうかはちょっとお答えできないんですけど、かなり重要なストーリーの中で存在になってくるということは確かです。まあこれ以上喋る
My life would be in danger if I were to say any more
まで
than
にさ
this.
せてください。
Thank you very much, sir. Moving on to question 3. I really like this one. So, what inspired Falcom to include fishing as a mini game in so many Trails titles? Are a lot of the staff into fishing in real life?
これは日本でもね
It's often said in Japan, you as the president like fishing, so you've told your staff you have to put fishing in the games. That's a lie.
まずそれは嘘です。まあやっぱりスタッフの中に釣り好きがいて、釣り好きのメンバーが釣りの内容
Yes, there are people in staff actually who do like fishing, there's that. But more importantly, it's about, again, the setting in the world and creating this feeling of exploration. As you're playing as the main character and you're going from place to place, we want you to explore the maps fully. We want you to be able to say, hey, that area over there looks interesting. Maybe I can cast a line over there and see what I can catch. To make you want to explore more and to give you a feeling of excitement as you explore. And so that's why it's there, because it's a fun element to add to that feeling of exploration as you're going around the world. On the flip side, for East, for example, you'll note that sometimes we will put fishing in there as well, but that's only when the situation allows.
シリーズには毎回釣りを入れてます。でイースの場合はまあ 設定上必要な時にはやっぱり海が舞台なのに釣りないの変だよねっていう時はやっぱりゼロを入れてます。はい。
Well, thank you very much. Give me my hand for the question. Well, so I've been informed we're running a little short on time, so this next one is going to be our very last question, and it is centered around world building in the Trail series. So, has your approach to world building changed at all over the past 20 years, and if so, in what ways?
そうですね。やっぱり20年って非常に長い期間なので。
Definitely. When we started making these games 20 years ago, that was a long time, obviously. And at that time, for example, cellular phones really were just kind of coming out and being used. And now we've reached the point where everybody has a high-spec smartphone in their pocket, so things have really changed. We really try to strive to reflect into the games in the world things that are kind of close to us and what's happening in real life and everything. And we've found that as the world changes, it's important to reflect those changes into the games that we make too. And so I would say that as we do make games, they are reflections of the world around us and the things that we're experiencing, and those come out. So that's probably ways that we've changed and to think about how games are designed and when we create the settings.
ゲーム内の世界設定作り込んでいますので、そういったところがやっぱり時代に合わせて変わっていくっていうのはやっぱりあると思います。それからその開発体制的な
And I mean, then there's me. You know, I started this when I was around 25 or 26, and I've gotten older, and now I can't believe I'm 49, and you know, here I am. So that obviously is affecting the way the game scenarios turn out as well.
だいぶおっさんになりました。やっぱりおっさんだけでいい。
And the thing is that at a point, no one's going to want to be playing games from an old man. So we work really hard to develop new staff within the company. As to give you an example, we have a lot of young people who are working on the games, and one of the gentlemen who worked on Trails Through Reverie, if you remember if you've played it, the Rufus side of the story and the whole, you know, Swin, Nadia, the Picnic Brigade and all that, that person actually made that. And I think you'll find that's probably really different than what's come out before and other games like that. And so I can see that as we raise and grow this new younger staff within the company, that it's really coming to fruition, and that the games are turning out differently and turning out, you know, great because of that. So we really are working hard to raise the next generation of developers as well. Yeah, the thing about making the Trails games is that, you know, we work really hard, and sometimes there's a lot of trial and error, and we work hard to make sure that we can do the best that we can, sometimes with limited resources, internal issues with people's personalities, which staff should go in which place at the right time. But within all of that, we are working as hard as we can to make great games that you all enjoy. And again, advance the Trails series, even though we are kind of reaching the climax here, what with it being about 70 to 80% finished. But we're going to keep pushing forward, we're going to keep making these games, and we hope that you'll be with us along the journey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kondo, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions, including our six people that came down to ask questions directly today. Thank you so much. We appreciate and encourage your engagement. We are always grateful for your input, and sorry we weren't able to get to more.
So thank you all. We're just finishing up the panel for today. But Mr. Kondo, this is your last panel of Anime Expo. I'm sure you've had a great time, or I hope so. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with your fans here today?
そうですね。さっき結構言っちゃったと思うんですけれど。
As I mentioned earlier, I've been working on this game for 20 years, but when I really think about it, it's been 23 because it took us 3 years at first to get FC off the ground. And so within all of this, there's been a lot going on. There's been a lot that we've tried to do to improve the games and make them better and things. However, we will still continue to do our best, as I mentioned earlier, and do our best to keep bringing these games to you as best as we can and make them better and better. And we really hope, again, that you'll stay with us and that you'll look forward to the games that we have coming out because the series will continue.
持っていただけるようなシリーズにしたいと思っていますので。今後も変わらず応援していただければなと思いますのでよろしくお願いします。
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Toshihiro Kondo, thank you very much.
どうもありがとうございました。